Hello everybody, this is Merlin here, and I wanted to do a very quick review of John Wick Chapter 4. I first saw the movie just last night with my friend Troll and his brother, and honestly, right after seeing it, I didn't really even know if I was going to do a review, because I was like, well, I felt like I didn't really have a lot to say initially, and I still don't really. I think that John Wick, especially at this point, is pretty self-explanatory. I think you probably already know enough about it initially. Like, if you want to see John Wick, you're going to see it anyway. But I feel like I guess I could give the general recommendation. Really, pretty quickly, just John Wick Chapter 4 is pretty much just a continuation of the other movies, and John is still trying to find a way out of his connection to the High Table through some shenanigans of some new element of the mythology that they just kind of concocted. The action's pretty good, but I will admit that the 3-hour runtime was a little bit noticeable for me. It wasn't bad, but I can't say that I didn't feel like it was a long movie. It was packed with a lot of stuff, so it wasn't really boring. But the first I don't know, about hour of the movie, I would say, I mean, it was a lot of just action, a lot of that typical John Wick, close-up shooting, fighting style that's kind of unique to him, where it combines a lot of gunplay with a lot of martial arts and just sort of a lot of wrestling. And my fiance were actually talking about it. She actually helped me kind of get some more thoughts as I was sort of reviewing it to her. I was like, it has that unique style, where something she liked is that, one thing about John Wick, these movies that have sort of reinvigorated the action genre with these sort of films, is just, there's a lot of quick cuts, like in the Marvel movies with a lot of the big action scenes. There's a lot of cuts throughout all these big fight scenes, so you don't exactly know really quite easily what's going on and who's who. It's harder to follow. But I like the fact that in John Wick films, the camera's often following us very intimately. We're getting up and close with John and his villains and his enemies as he's taking all the henchmen down one by one. So stylistically, the cinematography's always been great, and always some great fight choreography as well. Really good lighting and sound design, costuming. Really, the thing I've always loved about all the John Wick movies, the thing I've always enjoyed about them is, that not only is it trying to kind of elevate action movies to like this artistic status, like, action films done artfully, but, I mean, it is, you could argue, though, that it is still much more style over substance. Like, there's a lot of creativity, but there is still a very, very light, simple story. In the sequels, though, I feel like it's just kind of become, I don't know, I don't want to say it's diminishing returns, but just the fact that the story is very light and at the same time trying to expand the mythology in, ways that kind of are intriguing, but also very surface level. Like, when you think, oh yeah, like there's, John's excommunicado, and he can tear his ticket, or he's got his marker. Oh, but there's a way he can get back in with his family now because of this, old way of getting out of it. He's got to duel this other guy who, I guess has been charged by the High Table to take him out, but why him? What's his title exactly? Like, does he have one, or is he just another random crime boss that thinks he can kill John Wick, which I think would be kind of foolish at this point. So, the movies have had so much style and so much confidence, and they are fun. So, they but they don't really hold up to as much scrutiny as you might think initially. I don't know, it sounds like I'm kind of like putting down the John Wick movies, because I really do like them, but I think the benefit of the Wick movies for me was, having watched the movies and having those couple years between each one to build up to it. Like, it was an event, it was exciting, and I really did like the first one a lot. I did find it refreshing, and I still think, it's still the first one has the best plot and the best motivation. Still simple, but there was more meat to it, whereas now it's just like John's back and he has to kill people and he's trying to get out. It's nothing much has really been added to that, but they've been so well made overall that it doesn't really matter that there isn't a lot of substance there. Whereas I feel like in other action movies of a similar type, maybe you could say the same thing. There isn't that much story, but it's more obnoxious, or it's not as technically well done or crafted. Like, everything else about the movie's been put together well. It's just the heart of it, maybe not quite as much. But yeah, as far as this one goes, see, I am going off on more of a tangent than I thought. I think the two best things about this movie, even though the first hour of it, I felt like, okay, We've seen John Wick do his fighting style, shooting the guys in the head up close a lot. And they show us that again and again in this movie. And having, just marathon the other movies instead of having the years between all of them to build up to it, I felt like it did seem more repetitive to me having watched the other ones. So like, okay, we've seen his fight style, we've seen the dog stuff, we've seen him get my cars all the time, and so John Wick's, I just keep thinking, okay, I know he's invincible because he's awesome, and there's that, it's the whole protagonist, invulnerability thing, but even after a certain point, you're like, okay. And I was bringing this up to Troll about how one of my issues with the movies is that it's supposed to be the criminal underworld, and they are all assassins, but John Wick is sort of this guy who wants to get out, and he's sympathetic, but then there's another character, and it almost seems like he's surrounded by all these other characters like Winston and his concierge and all these people who are people we like that I guess, they aren't really that bad, they have honor and codes, but how far do honor and codes go when they're all basically these horrible murdering people? It's like, it seems to be too much, honestly, for me to even get behind. Like, I enjoy a lot of the organized crime stuff, but usually it goes much deeper into the lifestyle and the characters are more honest kind of about who they are. And I mean, there isn't this romanticism of John Wick and his other side characters that you'd see in a lot of similar gangster movies, where it's like it's sort of glorified, but at the same time it's showing you that that they're still doing things that aren't good and there are consequences to it. And they talk about that a little bit in this movie as they have in the others, but he's like the most likable assassin ever. Like, he doesn't really seem like a bad guy, even though he did a lot of bad things. And in the first movie, there was a little more of that dynamic human element that he regrets that. And it's just, we've kind of lost some of that a little bit. But anyway, I would say, like, one of the stronger things in it is really Donnie Yen. I mean, first of all, he plays, like, the Daredevil-esque blind assassin guy, and his allegiance to the High Table is based on his daughter, I guess, being put under the knife a little bit. She's in danger, and that's why upon their threats, he's in charge of them. He has to work for them, rather. And he's just great. I mean, I kind of had a feeling he's the selling point of this one. There's always like a new bad guy John has to fight, who's like one of the big bosses for the fight scenes. And Donnie Yen just, really... Birds. Donnie Yen has like a lot of really good just fight scenes, and he has the most character and I guess the most sympathetic nature. He was probably the most fleshed out part of the movie. He was the best thing about it from a story perspective, and he definitely added more. Troll and I were saying how the villain, the Skarsgård guy, who I guess was Pennywise, he was pretty good as the Marquis. He's basically the new big villain that wants to kill Wick this movie. And I did think he was good, but I also thought he was a retread of the guy in the second movie who I think had more of a connection with John and more of a motivation for what he was doing, and he was honestly eviler and more intimidating. So it's like, yeah, the Marquis was decent, but he just felt like a retread. So you see what I'm saying? It feels like they're sort of running out of ideas, and there's this guy who, he's trying to keep John Wick alive, but only so he can kill him when the price upon his head has gone high enough and says, when there's enough money in it, then I'll kill you. Like that at first I thought was cool. Excuse me. But my fiance pointed this out to me. Well, that's kind of like what Willem Dafoe was doing in the first movie, except he was John Wick's ally. So instead they kind of did the same thing, but instead this time, he was trying to kill Wick until they kept him, alive until they were making enough money. But then again, it might have turned out a different way. And for the benefit of my fiance, who may watch it eventually, I'm not going to go super into spoilers. But yeah, so they sort of did something new with him, and then not. But Troll's brother, Skylar, actually pointed out, I'm trying to get like their tidbits in this review here since we didn't record it. The one technical thing we really liked, Skylar specifically liked, it was the whole overhead shot when you see it, where basically then one of the new gimmicks was they were sending out incendiary rounds or like grenades that like basically set people aflame, which I'm not sure the logistics of how plausible that is. I think there might be like fire grenades or something, but anyway, they send a bunch of assassins in France after Wick with those, and he gets his hand on them, so he's just like shooting people and lighting them on fire. That was the new big stunt piece for this movie. And the way they shot it was like an overhead shot. So it was kind of reminding me of like the old Metal Gear games or something, the top-down view. So that was kind of cool. That was something really unique for this movie from a technical fight that we hadn't seen. So we had that. We had Donnie Yen and his gimmick and his character. Those were the two biggest things that didn't feel like complete retreads of other movies. So, but that's the thing. Those were elements in a 3-hour movie that I don't know necessarily needed it. Like, I think that's the thing. I'm a little conflicted because I think all the stuff in the movie is good John Wick stuff. But the first hour of it was like, the same sort of fight scenes we've seen before. Like, yeah, he went to Japan and that was cool, but it just, but it felt like it was all repetitive and also there are little things like the cinematography. They love holding on certain shots, like the sunrise in the opening. That was probably like a minute, and they must have rented out like a museum because Winston's walking to meet the Marquis, and there's all these really expensive paintings. And I guess, they said, hey, we got to show this off, so we're going to literally have him walking. And it's a cool shot, and it shows off the paintings. Like, I can't deny that it's good. I can get behind it stylistically. I mean, that's honestly something, if I was doing a movie like this, I would probably do. I'd probably indulge in that because if it looks good. But, I mean, does it really serve the story, and does it serve the pacing? No, honestly. And I just was thinking, you could do that, and I feel like the movie could have been probably like almost an hour shorter or 45 minutes shorter, heck, even 20 minutes shorter, and I think it would have annoyed me a little less, or but like I said, it's mostly good stuff, but I can't pretend I didn't notice it. My favorite thing about the movie, though, was there's the minor villain where Wick has to basically kill a guy to get back in the graces of his family so he can do the duel to get himself out of stuff. They have to track down this big German crime boss guy who's basically like German Kingpin. He's like this dude, he's got golden teeth, and they have to play like this card game because him and Donnie Yen and the other assassin guy who wants to get John Wick for the money, they're all playing the card game, and they're all getting ridiculous hands, and it's just this really tight, intimate, darkly lit scene where it's just a lot of personalities on display, and it's really fun. But he was just great, really evil personality. Really felt like it could have been a Batman villain or like a comic book villain. He was just like this guy who was really dense, kind of heavy set, but you could tell there's a lot of muscle under there, in the suit, and he just had this evil laugh, and he was probably my favorite villain in there. Like, when he kicks John Wick, it has a lot of power, but again, John Wick also gets hit by cars, so I don't know if that really means a lot, but overall, I think John Wick was pretty good, but maybe a little bit long, so I recommend it. You'll like it if you want to watch it. All right, everybody, let me know your thoughts on it if you saw it, and in the meantime, stay magical.